Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. And today we're diving deep into music.
Ooh.
I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, me too.
So, music and the brain.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, we all know that music affects us.
Yeah.
You know, it can make us happy, it can make us sad, pump us up.
Right.
But how does it actually work?
Right.
You know what's going on in there.
Yeah.
And we've got some great sources today to help us kind of break this down.
Yeah.
We've got a research paper called Cognitive Crescendo: How Music Shapes the Brain's Structure and Function.
Okay.
We've got this really neat article from Daily Good, Music and the Brain: The Fascinating Ways Music Affects Your Mood and Mind.
Nice.
And then we got another article from Pfizer called Why and How Music Moves Us.
Excellent.
So, we're coming at this from all these different angles.
Very cool.
So I guess the first thing for me
Yeah.
is that, music can change how we feel
Absolutely.
almost instantly.
Instantly.
You put on a sad song, you're
Yeah.
feeling that. You put on a happy song, you're
Absolutely.
feeling great.
Yeah. And it really is incredible how quickly that shift can happen.
Yeah.
You can be having a perfectly normal day and then a song comes on the radio and suddenly you're transported back to a specific memory
Oh, yeah.
and you're feeling all the emotions that were associated with that time and place.
Yeah.
And that's because music has a direct line to our limbic system, which is the emotional center of our brain.
Okay.
And within the limbic system, there are several key areas that are involved in our emotional responses to music.
Okay, well, what are those?
So there's the amygdala, which is responsible for processing emotions like fear and joy.
Oh, wow.
And then there's the hippocampus, which is our memory center.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the Nucleus accumbens, which is associated with pleasure and reward.
So it's hitting all those things at the same time.
All at the same time, yeah.
So you got the memory, you've got the
feeling,
feeling,
Yeah.
and then
and
the reward of it.
like, ooh, I like this. This feels good.
This feels good. I want more of this.
Right, exactly.
And it's interesting, too, because, this isn't just something that we consciously think about.
Right.
I think a lot of times, we'll be listening to music and it'll affect us without us even realizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about how music is used in movies
Oh, yeah.
to set the mood or to enhance certain scenes.
Yeah.
If you're watching a scary movie and the music starts to build up,
Oh, yeah.
your heart rate starts to increase. You're getting that fight or flight response.
You don't even realize it's happening.
Exactly. You're not sitting there thinking, oh, the music is making me scared.
Right.
You're just immersed in the experience.
Yeah, and then you leave the movie theater and you're still on edge.
Right.
You're like, why am I so,
Why am I still jumpy?
why am I still so jumpy?
Yeah, exactly.
And what's interesting, too, is that the research has shown that music can even evoke an emotional response in people who are in comas or have severe brain injuries.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable.
Yeah.
It suggests that our ability to respond to music is very deeply ingrained in our brains. And it really highlights the power of music
Yeah.
to connect with us on a very fundamental level.
So even if someone can't communicate or respond in any other way,
Right.
they still might be able to process and react to music.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that's one of the things that makes music therapy so promising.
Yeah.
It's this ability to reach people
Yeah.
who might be otherwise unreachable.
Yeah. So it's not just about feeling happy or sad. It's about,
It's about so much more.
it's about connecting with people on a really deep level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I think we've all had that experience where
Yeah.
we hear a song and it just brings back this flood of memory.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you have songs that when you hear them.
Oh, yeah,
You're instantly transported back to a certain time in your life.
absolutely.
And it's not just the memory. It's the emotions
Right.
that go with
It's
it.
the whole package.
Yeah, the whole package.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, too, because music can sometimes even evoke feelings that we can't quite put into words.
Yes, absolutely.
Have you ever heard a song that just gives you chills?
Oh, yeah,
Or makes you feel a sense of awe or wonder?
absolutely. And I think that speaks to the complexity of music
Yeah.
and how it can engage so many different parts of our brain.
Yeah, and it's not just a simple stimulus response kind of thing.
No, it's not linear at all.
Right.
Yeah, it's very much this multifaceted experience.
Yeah. And it's something that I think we're just beginning to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more research we do, the more we realize how much we don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
There's always more to discover.
Yeah, always more to discover.
Yeah. It really is fascinating, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Like this whole world of
Yeah.
music and how it affects our brains.
So, okay, so we've talked about like the emotional impact.
Yeah.
But what about like the physical side of things?
Right.
You know, like when you hear a song with a really strong beat
Yeah.
and you just can't help but like
Tap your foot.
tap your foot or bob your head or,
Yeah.
you know, like what is that all about?
Right. Well, that's all about rhythm.
Okay.
And our brains are hardwired to respond to rhythm.
Really?
Yeah, it's like this primal instinct.
So go ahead.
And there's this concept called entrainment.
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 Okay.
Yeah. And basically what happens is that when we hear a steady beat,
Yeah.
our brain waves will actually start to synchronize with that beat.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, and so our body naturally wants to move to that rhythm.
Okay, so this is why it's so hard to like sit still when you hear a really catchy song.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like our bodies just can't help but move.
Yeah, and it's not even like a conscious decision.
Right, it's just this automatic response.
Yeah, and the Daily Good article mentions that this entrainment thing, it's not just about like tapping our feet or
Right.
bobbing our heads. It can actually affect like our breathing and our heart rate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can even affect our mood and our cognitive function.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get into the specifics of this. Like what's
Yeah.
actually happening in the brain
Right.
when we're experiencing this?
Okay.
Like are there certain parts of the brain
Yeah.
that are responsible for this?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few key areas that are involved in our response to rhythm.
Okay.
So there's the basal ganglia,
Okay.
which is involved in motor control.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the cerebellum,
Cerebellum.
which is responsible for coordination and timing.
Okay.
And then there's the premotor cortex,
Premotor cortex.
which is involved in planning and sequencing movements.
Okay.
And so when we hear a rhythmic beat, all of these areas start firing and working together to help us move to the beat.
And what's interesting is that the Pfizer article mentions that music training
Yes,
can actually change the size of some of these areas
it can.
in the brain,
Yeah.
like the basal ganglia and the cerebellum.
Yeah, they're actually physically larger in musicians.
So musicians have bigger brains.
Well, not necessarily bigger brains as a whole,
Okay.
but certain areas of their brains are more developed.
Wow. So it's not just about practice makes perfect. It's
That's
like
so
practice
cool.
makes your brain.
Yeah, practice changes your brain, which then makes you better.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about the emotional side and the
Physical side.
physical side. But you know, another thing that I think is fascinating
Yeah.
is how music is so intertwined with our memories.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I think we all have songs that
Yes.
bring back vivid memories.
Absolutely. And, you know, sometimes it's a good memory, sometimes it's a bad memory.
Right.
But it's just amazing how music has this power to unlock
Yeah.
these
The time capsules.
time capsules. You know, like you put on a song and you're instantly
right back there.
back in high school or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Whatever that time period was. Yeah.
So do we know why that is? Like what's happening?
Yeah, so there's a few things going on.
Okay.
First of all, music is processed in multiple areas of the brain. So it's not just the auditory cortex that's involved. It's also the limbic system, which we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
which is the emotional center of the brain,
Yeah.
and the hippocampus, which is our memory center.
Okay.
And so when we hear a familiar song, all of these areas light up
Okay.
and create this really rich multisensory experience.
Okay.
And that helps to strengthen the memory.
Okay.
And then the other thing is that music often has a strong emotional component,
Right.
as we've been talking about. And emotions are very powerful memory triggers.
Okay.
So when we hear a song that evokes a strong emotion,
Mhm.
it's more likely to stick in our memory.
And the Pfizer article even mentions that like people with brain injuries who might have trouble with language can still
Yeah.
feel the emotion of music.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that is amazing.
Like, even if they can't remember the words to a song or even understand the melody,
Right.
they can still feel the emotion.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable.
Yeah, so it's like music is bypassing
Right.
like the damaged parts of the brain.
Yeah, it's finding a way in through the emotional centers.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's powerful.
it is. Yeah.
And I'm also curious about, music therapy. We kind of touched on that
Yeah.
a little bit earlier.
Right.
But I'm wondering, what are some of the ways that music therapy is being used today?
Well, it's being used for a wide range of conditions.
Okay.
So everything from anxiety and depression to autism and dementia. Yeah, it's really quite remarkable.
Yeah.
And it can be used in a variety of settings. So
Great.
Hospitals, schools, nursing homes,
Yeah.
private practice.
So, like, how does it actually work?
Yeah.
Like, what does a music therapy session look like?
Well, it really depends on the individual and their needs.
Okay.
But some common techniques include
Okay.
songwriting,
Okay.
improvisation, listening to music,
Yeah.
and even playing instruments.
Okay.
And the therapist will work with the client to create a personalized treatment plan
Okay.
that addresses their specific goals.
And, in the Cognitive Crescendo article, they talk about how
Yeah.
music therapy can actually help to improve
Yeah.
brain function
Yeah.
in people who've had strokes or traumatic brain injuries.
Right.
And, I was reading about this thing called melodic intonation therapy,
Oh, yeah.
which is used to help people with aphasia.
Yeah. Aphasia is a communication disorder
Okay.
that can affect a person's ability to speak and understand language.
Wow. And so melodic intonation therapy can help with that.
It can. Yeah, it's really quite amazing.
So they're using music to retrain the brain
Right, exactly.
to speak.
Yeah, it's like music is providing a scaffold for the brain to rebuild those connections.
That's incredible.
It is.
And then there's another technique called rhythmic auditory stimulation.
Yes.
And this is used for people with Parkinson's disease.
Right.
And it helps them to improve their gait and their balance.
Yeah, it's incredible how music can be used to address such a wide range of physical and cognitive challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really speaks to the power of music
Yeah, it really does.
to heal and to transform.
So, is there anything that music can't do?
Well, I don't know about that,
That's a good point.
but it certainly seems like it has a lot of potential.
Yeah. It seems like the possibilities are endless.
They really are, yeah.
And, it's just amazing to me how much we're still learning about music and the brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the more we learn, the more we'll be able to harness the power of music
Yeah.
to improve our lives.
And the Daily Good article mentions something really interesting, that music and language actually share some of the same neural pathways in the brain.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And so there's been some research that suggests that musical training
Yeah.
can actually improve language skills.
Oh, really? Yeah. Like, how? So,
Well, for example, there have been studies that have shown that
Yeah.
musical training can improve phonetic discrimination,
okay.
which is the ability to distinguish between different sounds.
Uh-huh.
And it can also improve verbal memory
Okay.
and reading comprehension.
Wow.
Yeah. So it seems like there's this really strong connection
Yeah.
between music and language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And makes sense when you think about it, because both music and language
Right.
are forms of communication.
Exactly.
And they both rely on our ability to process sound.
Yeah, and they both have structure
Yeah.
and patterns. Yeah, so it's not surprising that they would share some of the same neural pathways.
Yeah, and the Daily Good article talks about how children who participate in music-focused preschool programs
Yeah,
actually show stronger language development
they do.
than kids who are in dance-focused programs
Yes.
or just regular preschool programs.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Yeah.
So, it makes you think, like, maybe we should be incorporating more music
Yeah,
into early childhood education.
absolutely. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
Pun intended.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have, yeah.
And it's clear that music has a profound impact
Yeah.
on our brains and our bodies.
Absolutely.
But I guess the big question is,
Yeah.
why
Wow.
why does music affect us so deeply?
Yeah. That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any one answer.
Okay.
But I think there are a few theories
Okay.
that can help us to understand. So one theory is that music is a form of social bonding.
Okay.
We've been talking about how music can evoke strong emotions
Yeah.
and create memories.
Yeah.
And so it's possible that music evolved as a way for people to connect with each other
Okay.
and to build communities.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when you think about it, music is often used in social settings.
Oh, yeah.
Weddings, funerals, parties.
Concerts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that it would have this social bonding effect.
And the Pfizer article talks about how
Yeah.
music can synchronize.
Yeah.
our brainwaves
Yeah.
and our heart rates and even our breathing
Yeah.
when we're listening to music together.
Yeah, it's like we're all getting on the same wavelength.
Literally.
Literally, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that can create this feeling of connection
Yeah.
and unity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just the music itself.
Right.
It's the shared experience.
It's the shared experience, exactly. And that shared experience can be really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like music is this invisible thread
Yes.
that connects us all.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this universal language
Yeah.
that we can all understand.
And and I think that's why music is so important.
Yeah.
It brings people together.
Yeah.
It helps us to communicate.
Yeah.
It helps us to heal.
Yeah.
It helps us to express ourselves.
Pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And we are back for the final part of our deep dive into the brain on music. And, we've been talking about all these amazing things that music can do. But
Yeah.
one thing that really blew my mind is this idea that music can actually change the structure of our brains.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I always thought, you're born with a certain brain and that's it.
Right.
But it turns out that's not true.
Not at all.
Like our brains are constantly adapting and changing.
Yeah, they're incredibly plastic.
Yeah.
Meaning that they can change and reorganize themselves in response to our experiences.
And music is one of those experiences that can really have a profound impact.
Absolutely.
And the PMC article talks about how musicians' brains are actually different
Yes.
from non-musicians' brains.
Yeah, there are some really interesting structural differences.
Like what kind of differences?
Well, for example, musicians often have a larger corpus callosum.
Corpus callosum?
Yeah, that's the bundle of nerve fibers that connects the two hemispheres of the brain.
Okay.
And so this suggests that there's more communication happening between the two sides of the brain in musicians.
Interesting. So it's like playing music is strengthening that connection.
Exactly, yeah. It's like a workout for the corpus callosum.
I like that.
Yeah.
And they also have a larger auditory cortex.
Yes, the auditory cortex is the part of the brain that processes sound.
Right.
And so it makes sense that musicians would have a larger auditory cortex.
Yeah, because they're spending so much time listening to and analyzing music.
Exactly.
And they also have a larger cerebellum.
Yes. The cerebellum is involved in motor control coordination and timing.
Okay, so all these areas that are essential for playing music
Absolutely.
are actually physically larger in
Uh-huh.
musicians.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable.
So it's not just about talent.
Right.
It's about how our brains are actually changing in response to our experiences.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is what we call neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
It's this incredible ability of the brain to adapt and change throughout our lives.
So, does this mean that anyone can become a musician?
Well, I think everyone has the potential to develop musical skills.
Okay.
But certainly the more we engage in musical activities, the
Yeah.
more our brains will adapt and change.
So even if you don't start playing an instrument until you're an adult,
Right.
you can still reap the benefits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never too late to start learning.
That's good to know because I've always wanted to learn how to play the guitar.
Well, there you go.
Maybe I'll finally do it.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we've talked about the structural changes in the brain, but the PMC article also talks about functional adaptations.
Yes, functional adaptations refer to how the brain responds to tasks.
Okay.
And in the case of musicians, their brains are more efficient at processing musical information.
Okay, so give me an example.
Sure. So, for example, when musicians listen to music,
Yeah.
their auditory cortex shows more activity
Okay.
than non-musicians.
So they're really hearing more.
They're hearing more, they're processing more.
They're just more attuned to it.
Exactly, yeah. They're more attuned to the nuances of music.
Wow.
Yeah, and this could explain why musicians are often so good at picking out subtle differences in pitch and rhythm and timbre.
Yeah, it's like they have a superpower.
It kind of is, yeah.
That's cool.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so I guess one last thing I want to touch on is this idea that
Yeah.
music can actually help to improve our overall cognitive function.
Yes, there's a growing body of evidence to support that.
Like how so?
Well, for example, studies have shown that musical training can improve memory, attention, language processing, executive function.
Wow. So it's not just about music.
Right.
It's about improving our brains in general.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a brain booster.
And the Daily Good article mentions that
Yeah.
music can even help to delay cognitive decline.
Yeah. There's some promising research in that area.
Wow.
Yeah, it seems like music can really help to keep our brains sharp.
That's amazing.
It is, yeah.
So I think we've covered just about everything.
I think so.
But any last thoughts?
Well, I just think it's amazing how much we're still learning about music in the brain.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see what the future holds.
Me too. And, if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive,
Yeah,
it's that music is more than just entertainment.
absolutely.
It's a powerful tool that can enhance our lives in so many ways.
Yes, it can make us smarter, it can make us healthier, it can make us happier.
And it can bring us together.
Absolutely.
So keep listening, keep learning, and keep exploring the amazing world of music.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next time.